Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, Daniel. Shalom, Daniel.
Shalom, Daniel.
Shalom, shalom. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yes. Shalom, Daniel.
Shalom, Jim.
You feeling better? You feeling better?
Yeah, I still got a little congestion, but
Good.
it's pretty much gone.
Okay.
I might just be dealing with pollen right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can never tell.
Yeah.
We'll give it a few more minutes. Joe checked on us, but I don't see him yet.
I'm
I would expect him.
in.
I'm in.
Daniel, do you have any word on when we might get a printed copy of Hadavar?
Adavar?
Yes.
That's a tall order because the printed copy that we originally did, I don't know if you can see this, is mammoth. See how thick it is and how big it is? And
Yes.
This is just the English. Okay, and that's because of the weight of the paper. And so the self-publishing industry has a limit on how thin the paper can go or how light the paper can be. And that limit is what we have on this printed copy. Unfortunately, the publisher that did this, looks like they went out of business because of COVID. So we can't get that anymore. I am working on completing the Hebrew and English version. And what I'm going to do is look into using a publisher from India who can print a typical Bible with the very thin Bible paper, because it will take that, because obviously this is what, 1,200 pages or so. The Hebrew version is going to be twice that. It's going to be 2,800 pages, and so it will have to be done on lighter paper anyway, because we maxed out the size limit on that one. So right now there is no paper printable copy that you can get because the publisher went out of business. So if they go back into business by some miracle, maybe get a loan from the government, perhaps we can get that going again, but I don't know. It would take republishing it, which would be, for that book, it would be about $1,000 that I would have to pay in order to get a different self-publishing entity to publish it again. So that's not out of reach, but you know, we could do that. But I was kind of hoping that the other one would show back up, but it doesn't look like they're gonna. So,
Okay.
long answer to a short question, but that's what it is. Do you have a copy of the PDF?
I do have the PDF.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
So you have that, so that's good. Obviously, it's my desire to have it in print, especially the Hebrew English version, which I'm finishing up. But money is the thing.
Sure.
All right, looks like Joe's having sign-in issues. We'll wait on him, or try to, and then we'll get started.
Shalom, are we here?
There he is. Shalom, Joe.
Shalom.
Okay, Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar bנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה יהוה נותן התורה. בשם ישוע המשיח. Amen.
Amen.
All righty, we left off with, is he a person? So let me share my screen.
You want some of this?
Is this thing working? Is anybody there?
Yeah, we're here. Can you hear me?
Joe?
Yeah, finally, I think I got something going on.
Don't fuss at me.
I'm not looking at you, but I was about to throw a 357 through this phone.
All right, so I'm just going to dive right in. We did a pretty good job of wrapping up last week, so I don't think we need a review. So I'm just going to dive right in. Is he a person? This is a tricky, and it kind of ties into how we wrapped up last week. The identity of Yeshua and Yahweh, the Creator, Elohim, the Ruach HaKodesh, the identity that he has given us has been, I believe, has been watered down and thwarted and twisted and convoluted and confused for 1,700 years at least. And many people have tried to overcome it, but and now if you think against Catholic orthodoxy at all, then all of a sudden you're not even a believer and no one listens to you. So it's a tricky subject to talk about. But we're going to try to tackle it anyway. So we have looked at the greatest mitzvah already. That's the Shema. Yeshua supported the Jewish teaching that this mitzvah from Devarim, Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 9, is the greatest of all the mitzvot. It should behoove us then to understand what this means. And we've talked about this already, but Yahweh is our Elohim. Yahweh is Echad. And Echad means one, singular. Many teachers of the Bible tell others that God is a Trinity. The definition of Trinity is three. If you look in a dictionary, you're going to see words like triad, but when it gets down to the nuts and bolts of what Trinity means, it simply means three. And that's a violation of what he says, our Elohim is Echad, one. It conflicts with the Shema, which is the greatest mitzvah, according to Messiah himself. Who remembers where Messiah said that? He said that actually, he said the greatest mitzvah in two places, but which citation are we more concerned with in this conversation? Who knows?
Is that where he says he came out from his father?
No.
No.
Where he said that the Shema is the greatest mitzvah.
Oh, okay.
It needs to be a tackle box verse. You need to have it up in the forefront of your mind. Yeah, if Yeshua said it, it's in the Brit Chadashah, yeah. Yeah, so Yeshua supports that the Shema, you know, and that's what I'm saying here, is in that third line in that paragraph, according to the Messiah. So Yeshua said the Shema is the greatest mitzvah. He did so in Yochanan Marcos, or Mark, chapter 12. I want to say it's verse 21 or 22, somewhere along in there. So they, and the they in this sentence is referring back to believers, many teachers. They feel okay with saying Trinity because they then say they are 3 in 1. Well, that's a bit of an oxymoron right there. They are one, okay? Unless you're talking about unified, and that is true. But that defies oneness when they say 3. So anytime you call God 3, the point that I'm making is in some way you are violating his word. And that sounds trite and simple, but that's really what it is. So it defies 1 as it is preceded by 3. They are 3. So saying that glory to the 3 in 1 is a bit of a misnomer, and there's a big reason for that. And I think you all already know it, but so don't let your mind get too twisted up and confused, okay? These teachers say that God is 3 distinct persons. And that's not in the scriptures anywhere. Nowhere do the scriptures call the Ruach HaKodesh a person. All right? In fact, our English word for person was made up of a Latin word to try to impose 3ness on God. Okay? And the reason I say that is because the Catholic Church switched from Greek to Latin in about the 5th century. So just a little history lesson here. Constantine was Greek. He was from what used to be known as Constantinople, which is now in northern Turkey, and who knows what it's called today?
Iraq?
It's Istanbul.
Istanbul. Istanbul in Turkey. It's the biggest city in Turkey. It's up in the north. It's what used to be part of the Greek Empire, and that used to be called Constantinople. That's where Constantine was from. He was the ruler of the east side of the empire, the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was divided, much like the United States is divided right now, kind of the 2 coasts and then the centerpiece. That's about how we're divided right now. We may end up doing that politically. Right now, it's just philosophically. But they were politically divided. So the western half was governed by Rome. The eastern half was governed by Constantinople, and what it used to be called then, I can't remember what that was. But anyway, the point is Constantine was a Greek, and he had the scriptures unified into the Greek text that we now have. Okay? Well, in the 5th century, it was one empire. Constantine actually unified the empire, moved to Rome, but his successors were very Latin, and so they had the scriptures translated into Latin in the 5th century. And so that's why I bring that up, because they did a lot of things in the Latin version of the scriptures to support the theology that the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Laodicea and Ephesus and all these things, maybe the early councils, they influenced that Latin translation. So, and I believe this is one of the places that it's done. So Elohim is the creator. Elohim is Yahweh. We see that in Bereshit chapter 2. Yahweh Elohim said to the man, right? I told you that. Chapter 1 is all Elohim. Chapter 2 is Yahweh Elohim because he's beginning to relate to mankind, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
He is not a person in the sense that he is not a human being. he doesn't have a personality like we do, although we inherit a lot of the traits that make up our personalities from him, because we are created in both his image and in his likeness, both in his form, you might say, and in his character, the way of being. So his thoughts are far beyond our thoughts. He is not a human being like us, okay? And we simply do not understand all that Elohim is, but he has revealed himself to us as Elohim. He has revealed himself to us further as Yahweh. What does that mean? His name. What does it mean?
Oh, I got it. Let me see. Where is that? You can paraphrase it. Oh, wait.
Huh?
Was,
Who was,
is, and
who is, and who will be.
He was, he is, he will be. So basically it means that he exists. The existing one. He always has been, he is right now, and he always will be. All of that is encapsulated in this name. It's the verb. Yiyeh. Hayahoveh Yiyeh. Okay, all in one word. And so he has finally revealed himself to us in his son, Yeshua HaMashiach. Yeshua said himself that he was inside of Elohim at the creation, and that he left his Father to come here. And so this needs to be, especially when you're having this discussion, this needs to be a tackle box verse. Yeshua said to them, if, can anyone fill that in?
Elohim.
If Elohim were Avichem, and Avichem means your father. Let me get that typed in there first. You would love whom? Or what?
Me.
You would love salvation. That's a fact. You would love me, for I what?
Proceeded forth.
Proceeded forth, right?
Right.
Y'all get that out of the Hadavar?
Yes,
Yes.
sir. That's all I read if I can help it.
Excellent.
When I say if I can help it, because sometimes
I get it. I get it. I wouldn't expect you to use it exclusively. Proceeded forth and what?
Came
Came.
out of, came out from.
Came out.
Came out. Okay.
Yeshua said to them, if Elohim were Avichem, your father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came out from Elohim.
Hmm.
Where was Yeshua in the beginning?
In the beginning was Elohim, and
Don't try to quote a verse. Just answer the question according to this. Where
he
was
was
Yeshua?
in Elohim.
With the
In the-
Father.
Huh?
He was in the Father.
He was in the Father. That's how simple it is. He said it. I proceeded forth and came out of my Father. Came out from my Father. Right? He was in it. And so, Joe, the verse that you were quoting, that's effectively what it was saying. You know, you were quoting Yochanan 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was within the form of. If you look at it in Hadavar, and I think I'd like to do that because I want to show you this. The Aramaic makes it kind of abundantly clear. John 1:1, Yochanan 1:1. In the beginning was Hadavar. What is that?
The word.
Bereshit haya Hadavar. Vehu Hadavar. And he, the what?
The word.
Vehu Hadavar. Haya, there's part of God's name. Doesn't it kind of look like it?
Mm-hmm.
Was. The word was Etzel ha-Elohim. Within the form of Elohim. Tzel being shape, if you will. Form. All right? And Elohim was he. Elohim was whom?
The word. Hadavar.
The same, what is that referring to?
Elohim. Or Hadavar. Could be either one.
Could be either one. But in this case, it's Hadavar. The same was in the beginning within the form of Elohim. So he repeats himself. That, to me, is making it emphatic.
Oh, yeah.
Hala haya bereshit etzel Elohim. This one, you might say right there, you put that in RedNet version, right there, in the beginning, he was in the form of Elohim. Okay.
Now I understood it.
Huh?
I said, now I understand it.
Yeah. All right. And so it's very simple. I don't know why we have to convolute it so much. And I think it's because of the Greek high thinkers that thought they had to make it complex. And you know, mankind just tends to do that. So Yochanan also tells us this. He said that Yeshua, Hadavar, the word, was in Elohim. Look at there. It's like I'm writing the book all over again. All right. We just looked at that. He calls him the light of life. We'll reference that verse for you. The life was in him, and that life is the light of mankind. I think we talked about that last week, did we not?
Yeah, we did.
All right, and that same light shines into the darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it. Okay, so Yeshua was there in the beginning. He was the light that emanated out of God. He was the Word of God. When God spoke, that was Yeshua manifesting. All right, that riding on the breath of God, if you will, and doing the work of God. Okay. Okay, where were we? All right, next page. Light, then, is the power that gives life. This is what shrouded Adam and Chava in the very beginning. All right? This life is Ruach, his breath. The Ruach Chaim, the living Ruach, the breath of life. This life is something we do not see. It emanates from the Father, Elohim. Indeed, scriptures tell us that Elohim is light and lives in light. Everyone would agree to that, right? You can,
Yes,
if
sir.
you want to find that scripture later and write it in your book here or put it in the notes somewhere, then go for it. It would help you. Yeshua shows us something about himself and his Father that explains who the Son is in relationship to the Father and his Ruach, what makes him different from every person. So Yeshua is a person. He is a man. He is a human being, right? But he is not like the rest of us. He's different. For as Ha'av has life in his nature, even so he has given to the Son also to have life in his nature. So the life that is God is inside of Yeshua. And so it's the nature of God that is in Yeshua that makes him different from every other man. What nature do we as men have that we don't have? If we don't have this nature, what nature do we have?
We have a sin nature.
Exactly. What does that mean?
That means we have a propensity to sin and not know good and evil from
Bingo.
just knowing nothing but goodness and godliness.
Bingo. We have a natural inclination, a nature to go against the word of God. It is the essence of our DNA. And that's why we have to be careful of every man. That's why we have to be suspicious of every man, including those of the cloth, including teachers. We have to be suspicious of them. And that's not to say that there's no one out there telling the truth, because many of them do. And I submit to you, again, I'll say it again, most Protestant Trinitarians are not real Trinitarians. They don't understand what the Catholic Trinity means. They believe it like we do. They just refuse to give up that word Trinity. Okay, and I believe there's a spiritual reason for that that maybe we can talk about later if we haven't already. Okay, Yeshua's nature. And I want to show you something that just, I've read it 1,000 times, but it just really hit me because it was our portion, I think 2 weeks ago. I'd have to think about that, but I think it was 2 weeks ago. It kind of backs up what I'm saying. Right here in Bereshit chapter 6. No, I think it's in chapter 7. Let me find it. Let me do it this way. It's in here somewhere.
Euler.
Yeah.
I had to.
It's in chapter 8. This is Elohim after the flood speaking. I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth.
Wow.
All right, and I want to show you that in Hebrew. That's verse 21 in chapter 8. Ki yetzer lev ha'adam ra mine'rav. So what I just read in English, that's where it is in Hebrew. Yetzer ra. You'll hear Jewish people talk about Yetzer hara. There is a prayer that we do in our Siddur every day that prays against that. Deliver us from the evil inclination. Okay? And so this is God talking from Ne'orav. So when a Na'ar is a young boy. Okay? So mankind is evil from his youth. You know, we talk about the innocence of children, and they are innocent, but nonetheless, they have to be constrained. You have to teach them not to do wickedness, because they're naturally inclined to do selfish and wicked things, right? And if they're not taught, they stay that way. If they're taught against it, we can mitigate it only to some degree. We can't completely expunge it of them, or all our children would be perfect. But we teach them and keep them from yielding completely to the evil inclination, right? Some people don't succeed in that. So their children grow up and they're wicked people. They don't believe in God. They do whatever they want. They have their own idea of morality, and they don't care how they offend other people. But you know, we try to teach it out of them, but it can't be done. So we have to be delivered of this. And so that's, to me, is one of the supports for the notion that our nature, our natural inclination is to go against his word. That's what God is talking about back there. Okay. Is God's nature, utter righteousness. Yeah, that's what we just read. Yeshua has the nature of God in it. Okay. I know you can't hear my wife's question. If you don't figure out what she asked by my answer, then just ask me. His nature contained that life. This is Yeshua's nature, the power of always nurturing and giving, invigorating people, shining on them in the realm of the Ruach, or what we call spirit. Yeshua's soul then was divine and not corrupt. It was a human soul, but it wasn't a corrupt human soul. He had the nature of God in him, right? While he was Stephen, did you have your hand up? Was that? Were you raising your hand in front of the camera, or? Stephen? Stefania?
No. Well, I guess since you're calling on me,
You
I'll
looked like
make
you had a question, so I wanted to make sure it was addressed.
No, I'll just say it's interesting that your wife was asking about that, because to think about it, how Yeshua walked in that constantly, and for us, we can I feel like we can be that way sometimes, obviously not all the time at all. Just I feel like it's hard enough just to do it once in a while, right? But the fact that Yeshua walked in that outpouring of the Ruach continuously, just it's something we should strive for. But obviously in our imperfect flesh, we can't achieve it. Although, like I said, sometimes we get to that point through the Ruach, obviously.
Well, that's it. I mean, Yeshua, the first 30 years of his life, he did not walk in the utter power of the Ruach HaKodesh, but he did walk in his divine nature, because either Yeshua is a human like us who had the divine nature in him such that he could succeed in never sinning. Okay, this is attributing the sinless nature to Yeshua. The sinlessness of Yeshua is attributed to the fact that he had the nature of God inside of him. He wasn't naturally inclined to sin. But I got a tickle in my throat. I'm sorry. I put honey in my, or I'm sorry, cinnamon in my coffee, and there must have been a big flake or something. So where was I? He did not have the inclination to sin. So even before he was imbued with the Ruach HaKodesh at his immersion, even before that, he walked a sinless life. So, but it does not mean that he wasn't tempted. And I don't know, we may get into that, but Yeshua was indeed tempted by Hasatan, but he overcame it because he had the nature of God in him and could, and was filled with the Ruach HaKodesh at that time. So, things are moving around on me in Zoom, and I don't know why. Okay. All right. So while he was in a human body, he acted like his father and was like him in every way, but he was in a body, a human mortal body. His father was still on his throne. The reason that I say that emphatically is because I have debated with Catholic scholars, and they will tell you that he was God on earth and that God was not in heaven, God was on earth. How many of you believed that when you called yourself a Trinitarian?
That's possible.
That's
No.
impossible. It doesn't even make sense. Because death is the absence of life, and Yeshua's body died. Did it not?
Yes.
So if that was God's body, if God transformed himself into an infant, put himself in the womb, and governed the universe from the womb of Mary for 9 months, and then governed the universe as a little baby on earth, and that is really what the Trinitarian doctrine teaches. If all that's true, then God himself died, and he would have never come back to life because he gave up his power when he died. All right? So it's important to recognize that Yeshua prayed to his Father. His Father was still on his throne. Yeshua said it over and over and over. I did not come of my own accord. My Father sent me. Okay? So that's very important. And so the word there for nature is pneuma. You see that right there in that middle paragraph. You need to put that on your glossary. I told you to put a glossary back in the back of your notebook or maybe in your workbook. You need to learn that word, pneuma. And that's Aramaic for nature. That's the nature of God that was inside of us. And that's not personality. That's it's what we call nature. Okay? His natural inclination was not to sin. So he's not a person like us. In other words, he's not a sinful human being. And there are some people who believe that he was just a guy. Matter of fact, that's what Muslims teach. That's what some Jewish people who want to be nice to the Christian community teach about Yeshua, is that he was a decent human being. Okay? So that robs him of his divinity. He is divine. And in some sense, he is God. I just don't like saying that in the I could have said that 2,000 years ago, and it would have made sense to people. Because we didn't have 1,700 years of Trinitarian conversation to deal with. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
He truly could do no wrong, even though he was tempted, because it was not in his nature to do so. All right? He came that we might have this same life within us. Think about it. What brought Yeshua's living human body to life?
The
Ruach. The Ruach.
He was conceived by the Ruach HaKodesh. You might make a note in your margin or somewhere to put the reference from Luke chapter 1 or 2, where it specifically says that he was conceived, that the messenger tells Miriam, or tells Yosef, what is in her is conceived by the Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? And that's the spirit of life. That's the light of life that invigorated Yeshua's body at the very beginning of his life. But when we are born, we do not have it. The Jewish community teaches that all people have divine light inside of them. That is not true. I think we've already established that. Some believers teach that. Certainly New Age people teach it. Human beings are born dead to the spirit realm. That doesn't mean they can't jack around with spirits. They certainly can, and they do, but they themselves are dead inside themselves, and hopefully that'll get a little more clear as we go along. Even though we are alive, we do not have that breath of life in us when we're born. He must give it to us, and he gives us this life when we choose to trust in his Father, and here's the thing, and in him. You have to trust in the Father and in Yeshua, the Son of Elohim. And until you do that, you do not have the life of God inside of you. And I don't care how many ways, how good they dance, how good they look, how good they speak, how learned in the scriptures they are. If they don't confess that, they don't know God.
Daniel,
Yes.
sir. What about babies, infants that die?
They're innocent of their sins. They haven't sinned yet. Notice that the verse that we read was Ne'erai, from youth up. So babies are innocent until they start moving, but they're completely selfish, and they need to be at that age, otherwise they wouldn't eat. Yeah.
And the original sin? Are they born with the original sin?
That's what we're talking about. They are born with the sin nature in them, yes. And one of the things that put me onto that was when our daughter she must have been 11 months old, and we went to my best man's house, and he had a 2-year-old, and our daughter was 11 months old, or thereabouts, maybe a year, maybe a little bit more. She was walking around at the time, and they were playing together. We were sitting there talking in the living room, and they were playing together, and my buddy's son, the 2-year-old, comes out crying and hurting bad. You could tell he was hurting bad. And Shelby, our daughter, walks out with this big, huge pot. It looked like it was made of lead. She had clocked him on the head with it. She didn't like something he did. She clocked him on the head with it. She was 11 months old and just being a selfish human being. Obviously, in innocence, she didn't understand, obviously, but you get what I'm saying. It just made me think about the fact that humans, little tiny humans, yes, they're innocent. They haven't done anything that we would punish her. And we didn't punish her for that. We instructed her and told her that's wrong. Don't do that. Don't do that. But that's the first time she'd ever done anything like that. And so, but they have to be taught. They're not born naturally righteous.
I understand.
Daniel, if I may, that's an example that I use a lot when I talk to people. That some people say that, oh, well, people just have an innate goodness in them and they learn to be bad. They kind of flip it back and forth.
Yeah.
And then especially when I talk to people who don't know Torah, I use that same example. I said, if you take 2 toddlers and put them on the floor with one toy, you will see how the human nature really comes to the dirtiness.
That's right. That's right. We are naturally selfish, and children have to be taught not to be selfish. And that goes on. That's probably our main job as parents. I can remember certain times in my life, every time that I got in trouble, it was because I was being a selfish little brat.
Right.
And so hopefully God took that out of me. There's sometimes I still go that way. I think we all do, but the sin nature we still deal with, and we will until we die. And hopefully there's a verse that I can give to you later in regard to dealing with it. But so let's move on. Okay. It is by this pure supernatural way or inclination or pneuma that he became our perfect sacrifice and defeated sin for us. And so I'm going to read this verse. We read it every week now in the synagogue. And by putting off his mortal body, he exposed the powers of evil, and through his nature put them openly to shame. So Yeshua's body died, and he was extracted from it and went into Sheol in his soul. And that's literally what the book of Acts says. And if we have to, we'll look into that. It may be brought up later. I don't know. It's been a while since I've reviewed the text. I wrote it, but it's been years ago. But we can look into that. But Yeshua's body was put in a kever, which is a grave. In Hebrew, Sheol is not a grave. When it talks about Sheol in the Hebrew Bible, and it says grave in the English, it's not talking about the hole in the ground. The hole in the ground is a kever. Sheol is the place of the dead. It's the power of Hades. It's the power of hell. It's the power of Hasatan. And so Yeshua was subject to Hasatan and bore the punishment of all our sin in his soul. All right? And so it was all heaped on him, and only someone with the nature of God could go to hell and endure that. Right? I wouldn't want to suffer my sin and your sin, much less 16 billion other people, or more. Okay.
So Daniel, real quick, 2 things. So did you say the hole in the ground is a keder, like a room, like the word keder for a room?
Kever, vet.
Kever. Okay.
Kever.
Okay.
That's
And the other thing.
kof vet resh.
Okay. I guess I misunderstood you. I want clarity on that. And the other thing is, does that mean that right now, and I don't want to get too deep in this because I know it's a whole other subject, but there's technically no one in hell yet, right?
They're there, but they're not in outer darkness yet. So there's more punishment coming. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's actually, if you don't follow me and Daniel on Monday nights,
I'll try to catch up when I can.
and we did one about that. You should see it in the comments about what happens when we die. And so we did talk about that in there if you happen to want to go catch that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. His nature was such that he was willing to take the blame and the punishment for all our wrongdoing. No human being would volunteer to do that. That is not in our nature to do. We might do it for someone that we love very much. It's close to us, but we would not do it for all of humanity. I wouldn't. I couldn't. Right?
Right.
For he, Yeshua, is the brightness of his glory, and that's the glory of Elohim, and the express image of his nature. So when Yeshua appeared as a human being, he demonstrated what it meant to be godlike, because he had God inside of him. And so he evinced the nature of God. He showed forth, he demonstrated the nature of God. That's what it means in Hebrews 1 when it says he is the express image, the perfect, the exact. Express in that context doesn't mean quick. And that's how we use that word today. But express in the sense of expressing your feelings, expressing something, that's the sort of the context of that word right there. He is the perfectly manifested image of his Father, the nature of his Father. Upholding all things by the power of his davar, his word. I think that's not davar there. I think it's omer, amar is the root. Okay, when he had through his nature cleansed our sins, then he sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high. And so you have the Father sitting on the throne, and you have Yeshua at his right hand. And I do believe that's literal. I do not believe it's figurative. I don't believe he's mincing words. There's nothing in the sentence to indicate that it's symbolism, nothing to that effect. But I fully believe that this is absolutely literal, that Yeshua is at the right hand of his Father, the majesty, up above. Everybody got that?
Yes, sir.
So when he is on earth, I could walk up to him and say, you're the image of God, and I wouldn't be wrong. Right? He's the express image of his Father. He's his perfect representative. It's similar to kingship in antiquity. When someone put on the seal of the king and was declared to be his ambassador, or whatever name for that office they had, and that person went to a person in the kingdom or a foreign nation and spoke on behalf of the king, they treated it as if the king himself were standing there. Right? That's a similar idea here, but it's even better than that, because in this case, Yeshua has the divine DNA of God in him. He's built by the nature of God. His the Ruach brought him to life. Okay? Any thoughts before we go on? Or question?
Well, I'd say it's almost like you can say that's an Apache helicopter, but you can take a model of an Apache helicopter and show what it looks like and show how it flies and everything. So like you can see what a real Apache helicopter would look like. Yeah. In a sense.
Yeah. Decent analogy. Yeah.
It's
if it's a working model, yeah. Yeah, it's similar. It's a similar concept to that, because it's an exact duplicate in smaller form, wrapped in human flesh, is what it is.
Right.
So
I'm just trying to find a way to explain it better to those who I end up talking to.
So just like a fire can split itself and rejoin itself, so does the Ruach. Okay. A fire can give itself to another agent, like one candle lighting another. Everybody's done that, I'm assuming. You've taken one candle and lit another candle, or even a match or something else with that same piece of fire, if you will. You pull it apart and the fire doesn't diminish at all, does it?
No.
It's got the same amount of fuel feeding it and the same amount of oxygen feeding it. And so it becomes another flame in and of itself, but the source of it was that first fire. So that's one of the earthly powers to which Abba compares his Ruach, his life. And here's the key to help us understand him. So when you said Apache, you're certainly not calling God a machine. That was an example, right? When we say fire, we're not calling God earthly fire, but he compares his Ruach and he calls himself a consuming fire in order to help us to understand his nature, okay? And so we see these verses, though, that the one Elohim put his very nature into the man Yeshua HaMashiach. And so what I'm saying here is it's similar to the flame of one candle occupying the wick of another candle and being the same source, being the same power manifested on and in something else. All right. And that's what happened when Yeshua became a baby, is that the nature of God was sort of temporarily peeled apart in a sense and lit that human body. Is everybody good with that? Did it come out right?
Yeah, can I
Yes.
say something real quick? Is that I've heard, like you say, a lot of people who say they're Trinitarians are not truly Trinitarians. I've heard this exact same analogy put forth by those who try to explain the Trinity. You know, like, oh, it's like you imagine one candle, but you split the candle 3 ways, and you bring the candle
That's
back together.
because they do not understand the Trinity. They do not
Right.
understand the Trinity. And I think I get to that in here. If we don't, when we get to the end of this section, and I will explain that further.
Okay.
But you got to remember, this was written for 13-year-olds who are very adept at understanding it, by the way. But I didn't want to put too much Greek and Socratic logic in it. I wanted it to be plain and simple. So if we don't come back to that, remind me at the end, and we'll revisit what you're talking about. But that's what I said a while ago. They think they're Trinitarians, but in reality they're not. They believe in God the way He's supposed to be believed in, and by that they do not believe in the Trinity. And I brought it up a while ago. True Trinitarian doctrine says that God died. Okay.
Mhm.
And that God was on earth. That when Yeshua prayed, He was talking to Himself. You know, it was symbolic. It was for our sakes. I've heard the Catholic people defending their Trinity saying all kinds of ridiculous things like that. And this is what Isaac Newton was talking about. You have to divorce yourself from logic in order to believe that junk. Okay? All right. Mashiach means anointed one. That's pictured in the Tanakh in the priests, the Kohanim, the prophets, and the kings who were all anointed to be the representatives of Elohim on earth. And in order to anoint them, a large vessel of the best oil was poured over their heads. But Abba foretold that He would finally anoint someone, His Mashiach, which is His anointed one. We understand, and I hope everybody on the call and watching later believes that Yeshua is that someone, and He is the Son of Elohim, which means God begot Him, and that's what we're talking about up here, is He begot Him. He put a piece of Himself in Miriam. You know, He duplicated Himself in Miriam, merged His nature with humanity. Okay, that's how He begot Him. Okay, and so He is the Son of Elohim, whom we learned about in the previous section. So you have to go back to last week. That's what we were talking about. So oil is another picture of the Ruach HaKodesh. One could say that this picture is the picture of His nature, the Kenoma of Elohim that was in Yeshua, because oil is the source of the fire in the menorah. And here sits a picture of the menorah. Now that one has, I should probably replace that because that one has candles on it and not oil. It's hard to see oil. But the original menorah in the temple had bowls of oil, olive oil in it. Okay, and so they are the source of the light once the flame is added. That's what keeps the light going. Okay. There were 7 bowls on top of each branch of the menorah, and they contained olive oil. These 7 lamps were lit with another source of fire, and they burned all night long. That other source in our analogy would be God Himself. The one in the middle was always lit. That's called the Ner Tamid, if you want to write that down. N-E-R, 2 words, N-E-R, second word, T-A-M-I-D. The eternal flame, the eternal lamp. As the priest would add oil in the morning to that one to keep it going. So that middle branch was always lit. This one lamp, that is one lamp, but it has, okay, so the menorah, I might change that. The menorah is one lamp, but it has 7 lights. So if you're standing back at the front door of the Beit HaMikdash and the menorah is back in front of the veil where it says it is, and you walk in, what do you think you see?
Light.
One light.
Or 7?
You'll see one light,
One light.
one brightness.
It's not until you get up close to it that you see the distinct candles, right? You can
Right.
get 2 candles close together, and if you're far enough away, it looks like an individual light if their flames are bright enough, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the menorah is a picture to help us begin to understand Elohim. This is a picture of the Spirit of Messiah, the Spirit of the Anointed One, who gives light to all men who trust. That's a picture of our life. This is why the menorah is our symbol on everything, because this is critical to us. The Ruach HaKodesh is all we have on earth that is the tangible evidence of Yeshua. That's it. So, Elohim is not a person, and the operative words there are, he's not one like us. He's so much more than us. Because this Ruach is Elohim as well, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, so, and like Hebrews 1, we've already mentioned Hebrews 1 verse 3, I believe it was, but Hebrews 1 through 4, that needs to be your best lure in your tackle box. When you're fishing for Trinitarians, that's your best lure right there, is Hebrews 1 through 4. Okay? God has appeared to us in many forms, in many ways in the past, but today, in these Acharit Hayamim, in these last days, he has manifested, appeared, spoken to us by his Son. That's the only way he speaks to us today, is through Yeshua. All right, and he does that by the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. There are people out there who read the Bible all day long and they don't understand it. And they preach it and they don't know it. They twist it, they use it for their own nefarious reasons. They're fake. They don't understand these things. Okay?
Which also means there's no prophets today.
Well, yeah. Well, there are people who have the Ruach, but I don't believe anyone sits in the office of a Navi. You're right. But certainly, the majority of people who are out there don't really understand this. And I think some of them are saved, but they can't explain it. And then some of them just don't know. Okay? But God, the Creator, has extended himself to us in Messiah Yeshua by his Ruach, his breath, his power. Ruach means breath or wind. Okay? God anointed Yeshua with his Ruach. And now Yeshua anoints us in the same way. The source of the fire is Elohim. I said that just a second ago. And that source is beyond our comprehension. We have him somewhat explained to us. We are created in his shape, his form, and in his character. We were created that way, but we lost his character. We didn't lose his form. We were diminished down. We were, disrobed of his light, if you will. And we have become mortal and without life until we trust in him. So we can perceive that and understand what he expressed to us through his Son Yeshua, who gives us enough of this life, you could call that fire, you could call it oil, to see by in this dark world and to live forever by it. It is one fire. It is one Ruach. It emanates from God the Father himself, through Yeshua, through the menorah, to the earth, to each congregation, to each individual. And so the Ruach lives in both the Father and the Son, and now also in us, if we truly trust in him. That's a big thing. Is everybody here?
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
Yes.
All right. Abba clearly is able to control this fire, Ruach, life, because he's the source of it. He controls it. he put it directly into Yeshua in the womb of Mary, Miriam. I'm going to change it to Miriam. As a human baby boy, Yeshua grew up with this in his nature, preached and preached about it to make others understand, and he gave it to those who trusted that he had risen from the dead. And if you study Yochanan chapter 13 through 20, then you see this. You see that at the Passover before he died, he could not give them the Ruach HaKodesh, and they could not yet understand things. And so he had to promise, I'm going to send you the Ruach HaKodesh. And when I do, then you will understand, and you will remember everything I've told you. You will get it, okay? And then he dies. He rises from the dead. He shows up that evening of the first day of the week, and he breathes on them and says, receive the Ruach HaKodesh. And that's this verse right here. When he said these things, he breathed on them and said to them, receive the Ruach HaKodesh. Those 10 men, and I say 10 because you'll find out Timothy was not there. He was a twin, and I believe he was visiting his twin brother. That's just me. Didymus means twin. So those 10 men received the Ruach HaKodesh at that moment. They were saved. They weren't filled with his power just yet. Then the light of God was put inside of them, and they became new living beings, brand new people, if you will. Okay? 3 days before, Kepha couldn't even stick with Yeshua when they weren't even threatening to put him in jail. You know, he ran like a chicken. He cursed the people for associating them with Yeshua. And then after that, next thing you know, he's going to his deathbed for Yeshua, because of Yeshua, right? So
You know what? That makes a lot of sense now, if I may. Because I was thinking a while back of the verse where Yeshua told his disciples, pray that you are counted worthy. And he's talking to men who had been walking with him. They weren't saved yet until this verse here that you bring up. Then that's when they were saved. And then, like you said, they didn't have the power of the Ruach HaKodesh until the book of Acts, if you will.
exactly.
So that makes sense now. Like, they knew who he was, but they weren't saved yet, because nobody can be saved until his death and resurrection.
That's
So
right. And they can't be saved until they receive life from Yeshua.
Right.
That's what they received in that moment, was the life of God, the nature of God through the Ruach HaKodesh. It was imparted to them at that moment. Were they perfect people after that? No. You find out years later that Kepha was not perfect. He struggled with man-made laws for a season, and Shaul reprimanded him for it. And he I believe that he was contrite and fixed the issue. He was trying to be rabbinic. And Shaul, who was a better rabbi than anybody, reprimanded Kepha for it. And years later, Kepha defended Shaul, because there are a lot of Messianic people who get rid of Paul's writings. I don't know if you know that. But be careful of that. They dismiss the book of Hebrews altogether. Some of them, a lot of them dismiss everything that Shaul wrote. And so you've got to be careful of that. But the reason is because they don't understand what we're talking about right here. And they may not even be saved. They may just be playing a religious game. But they received the breath of life in that moment. The day after Passover, the first day of the Omer. That's what the Omer is the beginning of first fruits. Okay? And so they received the breath of life, and that moment right there, they received the power of the Ruach HaKodesh 50 days later. But the indwelling, the implanting, the transformation from death to life, they received on the day of the resurrection. And that is the moment. That's what I received when I was 11 years old. I didn't receive the power of the Ruach HaKodesh until years later when I asked for it, you know? And so I walked around like a marble on a pinball machine, just getting knocked around by life for 8 years, you know, until I received power from on high and he began to guide me into his Torah, okay? So it's a different thing. And so we really need to understand this. And there's a lot of goofball teaching in the Protestant world about that. Okay. And so you should be throwing away all that you've learned, not to utterly forget it, but to sort it out. Is everybody with me in that statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you have some
Yeah.
truth in your facts and in your learning, but we need to sort it out and lay it out a little more clearly. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay. Elohim is also giving it to us. Giving what to us?
Daniel, can I just mention one thing quickly about what you just said about the salvation comes when you trust in Yeshua, and then you don't automatically get the ruach. I mean, that's something I've heard, people say is it's just like it's automatically there the moment you believe in Yeshua, or and so I think the same. I think along the same lines that you're saying, which is that you can believe in Yeshua but not have the ruach in you unless you eventually receive it, I guess.
Well, I would disagree, because what did he say right here? Are you looking at my screen, Stephen?
Yes.
What did he say right there?
He said, and when he said these things, he breathed on them and said, receive. He said, receive the Ruach HaKodesh.
That's right. So they received, so let me put it this way. They had their candle lit, okay? They had the seed of life planted inside of them. They were birthed into the kingdom of God. So it's not that they don't have the Ruach HaKodesh, it's that they don't have koach, power, yet. Because 43 days later from this day, Yeshua said, wait here in Jerusalem until you receive koach from on high. That's the difference, Stephen, is they have the Ruach, but they don't have the power of it. They don't have the garment, the anointing of it, until they receive that, which is a second thing to receive. It's still the Ruach, but it's a greater measure of it, and it lives in us and on us. And it's tangible. You can feel it. That's what you sense when you're around other believers. Are you with me?
Okay, yeah, I guess that's why I was confused by what we said a minute ago. And that's my toddler screaming. Sorry.
The toddlers need it.
So no, that makes sense now. Okay, I agree with that, and because I can relate to it when I was, a young believer, and then growing up, I didn't have the power, and I fell away, and then after I started walking this walk, I believe I gained the power. So that makes perfect sense, actually.
Yeah, so, and you just testified in brief. I'll testify just a little bit more, but still in brief. I was 11 years old when I got saved, and it was transformative. I was a different person after that, and I truly had a deposit of his nature inside of me. And for 3 months, I was little Mr. Prophet, for 3 months. And then things kind of calmed down a little bit. And then, that was at 11 years old. 3 years later, we moved to Beaumont. My parents stopped taking me to church. So I was going and keeping oil in the lamp, perhaps, just enough to keep the flame burning for 3 years. But then after that, I don't think the flame ever went out utterly, but it was certainly starving to death. And the lamp, if you're familiar with an oil lamp, what happens if the wick is not trimmed right? The globe,
It burns the wick. It burns the wick, and then it goes out.
and the globe gets black. You can't see as much of the light, right? So,
Right.
So that's what Yeshua is talking about in trimming your lamp, But so, in that 8 years, it was like the wind was just blowing my little flame around. And you know how a candle, if you blow on it, will almost go out and then stand back up? That's what I felt like for 8 years. And then, at 22 years old, it was like God lit that and then gave me that koach that he was talking about. Does that mean I lived a perfect life? I'm 54 now. That's been 32 years. No, but it means that I've been on a growth curve, a steady growth curve for 30 some odd years. And does Hasatan still try to put that light out? Yes, he does. But I'm more aware of him, and I have fought more effectively for 32 years, and I've grown, and I have begun to minister to other people and help them and grow them and give them more power. And so that's the difference. I never would have been able to achieve anything in the realm of the spirit by way of helping other people if I myself were not given koach, might, the power of God. Okay? And so that's the difference. There are plenty of believers out there who do not have koach, and yet they still believe that. And you might not even see their light at all. It might be so dim. But they are believers. They're his. Don't judge them. And that's the problem in the Messianic community, is they judge them. You know, and some Christian communities, people, you know, I had it said to me back when I was so cruelly judged last year, when I hadn't even done anything to speak of. A Messianic brother gave me good counsel, and one of the things he said was, people discover the Torah and they get judgy. You know, they get a little educated and they get judgy. All right, and so you can educate yourself right out of this, you know, and forget to look for the light of God. And yeah, that person may not have koach, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't belong to Messiah. Okay, and if you're so concerned about him, if you were a true believer in Messiah, you'd say, you pour oil on him, perhaps without them even knowing it, you know, and help them grow and help them get to the point where they have koach so that they can grow, you know. That's our job as a congregation, and we're not doing it. So that's what we're trying to attempt to do here, is give you all koach, you know, by first explaining to you that it exists and you can walk in it. Okay. Elohim has. Yeah.
I'm sorry to. So, as a oneness Pentecostal, I believe that I received the Ruach Kodesh, and they used to prophesy, and I spoke in tongues, and then that went away when it fell away. Was that legitimate?
I can't speak for you because I wasn't there, and I don't know your experience. You're the only one who can make that decision. Some of that, you know, I told you on the phone earlier, my wife was Oneness Pentecostal when I met her. She was United Pentecostal, UPC they called it, United Pentecostal, and they are the chief of the Pentecosts.
Same thing.
Yeah. And so she had the same experience. And I can tell you that going to church with her in our courtship, I knew the difference between what she was experiencing and what some of them were experiencing, because her fruit was also different from their fruit. They were very judgmental people. They lived duplicitous lives. The preacher had a TV in his bedroom, but he told everybody in the church the TV was from the devil. You know,
I had the same
judgmental over people. If you didn't have your hair set just so, then you weren't righteous. If you didn't wear the exact kind of clothes, and they judged the crap out of me just because I had long hair and muscles and a sports car. So I could tell the difference between what was in my wife and what was in them. So you may have had a real experience in the Ruach HaKodesh, and my wife still speaks in tongues, and I say it differently. I speak in other languages by the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. I do. I just don't make a show of it. I don't do it in public. I don't do it near as much as I used to, because I don't need to, because what is it for?
It's for worshiping Elohim.
No.
For his. For the Spirit to intercede.
It's for your edification, right?
It's for the edification of oneself, and it's to be done in private. It's a private thing unless there is someone who has the power of interpretation, and that doesn't seem to manifest much. And so what happens is, and I've been in those settings, and I can tell the difference, because once or twice I have actually heard what I knew to be an actual language with an interpretation. Okay? But most of what I saw was Shandai Rondai, tie my bow tie, which is just nonsensical syllables tied together and sometimes taught to the individual. And I could go from, we hopped all over East Texas, and in just about every congregation, I heard the same syllables over and over and over. And some of them, all they said was, oh, sha-la-la-la-la-la, or sha-na-na-na-na-na. You know, it's gibberish. But then there was those one or two times, and I've experienced it, where I believe I spoke Chinese. My wife, I told her, I said this word over and over again. I told that word to my wife. She went to our Vietnamese dry cleaner, and because she was Oriental, asked her, do you know what this means? That's Chinese. Okay, so I believe I did speak Chinese at that time, and it was in a critical, dire situation in my life. I couldn't do anything but turn to God. And I ended up speaking in another language, and the situation, I'll tell it in detail later perhaps, the situation was remedied within 30 minutes. And it was critical. It was life-threatening to my daughter. Okay, so it does exist. It is real, but only you can decide whether it was real or whether you experienced something, whether you generated it yourself or whether it was demonic, and there's some of that. Only you can decide that. So I can't weigh that for you because I wasn't there. But I will say this: in that setting, I believe most of it is probably fake and human behavior, and not the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, because their fruit proves to me otherwise. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right.
Daniel,
Elohim.
is it safe to say?
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
No,
But is it safe to say that something that is not 100% scriptural, but yet still brings you closer to God, is 100% of God? Does that make sense what I'm saying? It may not be 100% scriptural, but something happens or something that takes place that you're not following God, but because of this thing, it makes you look to God. It makes you closer. And now, I'm not saying to continue in the unscriptural behavior. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that the thing that happens that makes you stop and pause and reflect and look and move forward in a new direction, that has to be of God.
well, sure. I mean, you know, if Bilam told me a donkey was talking, I wouldn't have believed him. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. I am.
Yeah, sometimes God can use the most ridiculous things to turn us around. Yeah, if it may not, you know, you know, the first instance that pops in my head is I was literally smacked upside the head right here in my temple, right here, with a lead pipe about that big around. When I knew that I was disobeying God, just in my mind, you know. And it's a long story, but the short of it is when I got hit in the head with that pipe, which happened, there were no humans around. It was just me and a pipe. And that thing smacked me upside the head, you know. And it straightened it fixed my wagon, you know. And so, yeah, God can use bizarre circumstances that are not necessarily biblical, but they can certainly bring you around. But what I want to say about speaking in other languages is there is a biblical version, but there's also false versions of it.
I agree.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Hang on. Just to clarify, you were in a room with a lead pipe, and it smacked you upside the head.
No, I was outside.
You what now?
I was outside.
Oh, you were outside with a lead pipe.
I did not do it to myself. No, that pipe smacked me upside the head. Yes.
That is wild, man.
That's good.
No, I didn't walk into it. It moved. I'll have to tell that story
That is
later.
wild.
There's a reason for it.
That's fun.
Okay. Elohim has given it to us, the life, the ruach, the power, life itself, I should say, and is now teaching us to allow him to control it in us, to yield to it, to yield to him. He has, by his ruach, extended himself to us through the man Yeshua the Messiah. In other words, you cannot achieve that unless you confess genuine trust in the Son of God as the Son of God, risen from the dead, whose blood is a propitiation for our sin. When we do that, then he gives us that very life that we're talking about. It's a connection to the throne of God itself. We're umbilically connected to God himself through Yeshua by the Ruach HaKodesh. That's spiritual light. Wick, or the agent of our receiving this life is our heart actually trusting that Almighty Creator sent his nature to us in the form of a human body. That I'm just saying that a different way. I just reframed it just a second ago. To die in our place for our sinfulness, and if we truly trust in this, we confess it or say it to others. Just like this person said in Ma'aseh HaShlichim, Acts chapter 8, verse 37. I trust that Yeshua HaMashiach is Ben HaElohim, the Son of God. I trust that Yeshua the Messiah is the Son of God. That lights the flame. If we genuinely believe that, that lights the flame inside of us. So, find which verses these are and fill them in. And I'll give you a reminder, remember your concordance. Did anybody do this?
I
I
did.
did.
Okay, so for Elohim who said, let blank out of darkness, has shone in our hearts. So what's that first blank?
Light shine.
Yep.
Light shine out of darkness. So the one who said that has shone in our hearts so that we may be what?
Enlightened.
Enlightened with the knowledge of the glory of what?
Elohim.
Elohim. What's the scripture say?
Is that Eva?
It's me.
Hi, Eva.
Hi, Joe.
I thought I recognized your voice.
Yes.
In the face of Yeshua HaMashiach. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody write the verse?
Yes, I did. It's Corinthian bed 4:6.
Okay, the next one. This then is HaBesorah, which we have blank from him and declare to you that Elohim is blank and in him is no blank at all. So this is HaBesorah that we have what?
Heard.
Heard?
Yes.
Heard.
From him and declare to you that Elohim is what?
Light.
Light.
That I know what this one is.
Darkness.
Him is no
Darkness.
what at all.
Darkness.
Darkness.
Anybody know what verse that is?
Yohanan
First
Aleph.
John.
Sorry.
Yochanan Aleph.
1:5.
1:5.
If you have any questions or comments about these scriptures, just let me know. But unto you that fear,
My name. Oops.
shall what?
Shamesh.
What?
Tzedakah. Shamesh?
You're not making sense, German lady.
I know, I realized that just now, sorry. That, I don't even know where I got that from. I must have had a brain. Okay.
Not you sprechen Sie Deutsch.
Obviously, yes. Joyce, okay, so whoever fills in this one, please enlighten me.
Anybody find it?
I didn't find this one.
What's
What-
weird is that the Havdar and the Jewish Bible do not have Malachi 4:2 in them. I
Well,
found
they-
it in the King James.
It's Malachi 3:20,
Yes, I
It
have
is
that.
3:20.
and it,
Mhm.
yeah, it's the Shemesh Tzedakah.
Hey, I said that. I said it wrong, didn't I?
Got it wrong. That's what threw me off.
Yeah,
Shemish.
slight spelling issue here. Shemesh.
Shemesh.
Got it.
Son of.
Wait,
Ah,
wait a minute. So the name shall son of, what, doesn't make sense.
Shemish does not mean name.
Servant.
It means sun, like in the sun in the sky. Notice how this is spelled.
The Son of Righteousness.
The
Yeah.
sun.
S-U-N.
It still doesn't make sense. But to those of you that fear my name shall, there's a sun in the sky, shall righteousness arise.
Yeah.
Think of that passage like the bridegroom comes forth like a sun.
Malachi 2.
320.
Huh?
320.
Is that the Greek version or the Jewish version?
That's you. That's a Hadavar version.
Okay. Just making sure. To explain this, Joe, Shemish means sun, but it also means brightness. Okay? But shall arise with healing in his confot wings. This is
Okay.
so this is poetic. Okay? The Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings. And so kanaf is literally means an edge or a corner, as well as a wing.
So it's kanaf or wings.
Okay, but because it's sun, we know that this is poetry. All right. And the sun itself doesn't have a corner and it doesn't have a wing. Right?
Right.
But
Right.
what does have corners on it?
The Talit.
The talit.
Oh, yeah.
And so the woman who touched his kanaf, where the tzitzit hangs, I think intuitively knew this. She said it. If I could just touch him, I know I would be healed. With healing in his
All right.
confot. Hand me my talit, dear. I'm sorry.
Wow. Okay.
So this is a kanaf right here. You took my blanket. This is a kanaf right here. That's the corner, right? And that's where our tzitziot hang.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And so that's what that woman touched. And it says that, I believe in two places, but at least one, that she touched his kanaf. All right? And so Yeshua would have been wearing a garment with four corners on it that had tzitziot hanging on it. And so she may have just grabbed the string because the string touches the kanaf, right? Nonetheless, she
Right.
touched him. She grabbed this, okay? And so I believe this was prophetic, and that's why it's poetic here, okay? All right, next verse. Yahweh is my what?
Strength.
Light.
And my what?
Salvation.
Salvation.
I almost don't want to say salvation anymore whenever I read the English versions. I want to say my light and my Yeshua. Is that always wrong to say that?
Nothing wrong with that at all. Yeshua means salvation.
Okay.
And that lends to our the oneness with Elohim that we were talking about, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Whom shall I fear? Yahweh is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Does anybody know where that is?
Tehillah 27.
27 what?
That's what I didn't write down. I'm sorry.
Goober.
27:1.
Yes.
27, Tehillah 27:1.
Yes, sir.
All right, someone who's not reading it should know this. For with you is the fountain of what?
Cain.
Cain.
Chaim. What is Chaim?
Light.
Life.
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 Life. Life.
Time.
Or what?
Light.
Light.
Do we see?
No.
Oh.
Light is all, and Chaim is life, correct?
Yes. Is that correct?
And you're not, do we see?
That's what I got.
Yes, me too.
What's the verse?
Tehillah 36:10.
You see how this is all meshing with what we've been talking about? Supporting what we've been talking about? Anybody?
Yes.
Yeah, it keeps referring back to the oneness, like,
Bingo.
yeah.
Oh, send out your what and your what?
Light and
Light
truth.
and truth.
Your light and your what?
Truth.
The truth.
Let them lead me, let them bring me unto your Har Kodesh, which is your mountain, your consecrated mountain, your holy mountain, and to your dwelling places. Anybody have that reference?
Yes. Tehillah 43:3.
See how important the Tehillim are?
Man, they're awesome.
Yep. Happy is the what that know the teruah?
People.
People.
Oh, yeah, it says.
They know the blast, you could say, right?
That
Or
is
or
the awakening blast. That's correct. They walk, O Yahweh, in the what of your countenance?
Light.
Anybody find that verse?
89.
Say that again.
89.
89:15.
87.
Any questions so far? Okay, bless the Yahweh, O my soul. Yahweh, my Elohim, you are very what?
Great.
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 We say it every day.
Yep. You are clothed with glory and majesty, who covers yourself with,
Light.
Light.
Right.
as with a garment, who stretches out heaven like a curtain. And again, we reference back to our talit because we say this when we're putting on our talit, do we not?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Supposed to, if some people of us had a talit, which I need to get still.
Goober.
I know, right?
And that's Tehillah 1041, by the way.
1041.
On number 7, that's 8916.
Somebody get it out of King James.
No,
I'm
I
not
don't.
part 16. I'm looking.
Somebody, whoever's scratching, you need to mute. Is that you? Who's doing that?
Progressive.
Is it? Is all right. I'm gonna check. What is it? 89?
Yeah, 16.
89, 15, and or 16.
Yeah, it's verse 16. All right. What about the next one? Where is it?
104, verse 1 and 2.
Whoever that is, you sound like you're in a old radio show or something. That's a little fuzzy. Say it again.
104, verse 2.
104, verse 2. Number 8.
I thought it was first.
Actually, it's 1 and 2. It's both of them.
Okay.
Are we talking for question number 8?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Everybody ought to know this one. Your blank is a blank unto my feet.
The bar,
The bar.
the lamp.
And a what? Everybody knows it.
Light.
Lamp.
A light unto
Light.
my path.
Yes.
Incense.
For the mitzvah is a what? Oh, wait,
Light.
let's go back to this. Your devar is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Where's that?
119.
Say it again.
119, verse 105.
Tehillah. 118
119, 105.
and 105.
No,
Oh,
119,
I got it.
verse 105.
Okay, good.
For the mitzvah is a light and the Torah is a what?
Light.
Mitzvah is a what?
Mitzvah's a lamp.
That's what I thought. And the Torah is a light, right?
Yeah.
It's a light, huh?
And reproofs of instruction are
Derek Kaim.
huh?
Derek Kaim. Way of life.
It's that redneck Hebrew.
I guess. I'm trying to do the Hebrew as much as I can.
The way,
Derek Kaim. Is that right?
That's right.
the way of life.
Derech Chaim.
Way of life.
And where does that come from?
Tehillah, something.
Proverbs 6:23.
Oh, wow. 623.
O Beit Yaakov. Come and let us walk in the light of
Yahweh.
All right. Reference.
Yeshayahu 2:5.
Yeshayahu 2:5. The people that blank in darkness have seen a great.
People that walked in darkness have seen a great light.
Well,
They that dwell in the land of.
Zal Bamat,
Shadow of death.
Salmavet.
Tom Moffat.
Shadow.
Mabet.
Mavet.
Not Moffat, Joe. Mabet.
Say it again.
Mavet is in the driveway.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mavet.
Land of the what of Moffat?
The shadow of death.
doggone details about the syllables.
Shadow of death.
Upon them has the. Bueller.
Light shine.
Upon them has the light shine. Reference? Anybody know?
Yeshayahu 9:1.
How do they find?
4:16.
What? Teresa, I'm having a hard time understanding you. What did you say?
I wrote down 4:16. I could be wrong.
Well, let's look.
Only 6 verses in Yeshayahu 14.
The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwelt in the land of Salmavet, upon them has the light shined.
Is it 4:16?
9:1.
So it is 9:1.
Yeah.
Okay, so say that again. The
9:1.
people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the Salmavet of death. Salmavet means
Shadow.
Shadow of
the
death.
way we wrote it down sounds redundant.
Huh?
Oh,
Well,
shadow.
because the
So-
and death were in the English. Because it
So
was
Salmavet is basically like the shadow.
Sal is shadow, form, image, shape.
Death is.
Mavet is death.
Okay, so we can. Okay, now it makes more sense to me.
You look in Hadavar, you'll see it how it should be, which is how you see it on the screen
Okay.
now, if you're looking at my screen. So the shadow of death is the translation of it. It's not.
So is the word shadow in Hebrew, that zal, it sounds like that's a word that's more like nuanced than just shadow in English, but I don't know. Do you?
No,
do I
it means
think
shadow. It
Pardon?
means shadow. It means shadow, but all Hebrew words are nuanced if they're used in a different context.
Mhm.
Okay, upon them has the light shined. All right, so we're up to our treasure.
Yeah, but what's the verse?
Huh? Yeshayahu 9:1. Yes, can Not the last one? Number 12?
Oh, no, I have that.
Oh,
I was-
okay.
I was on the treasure.
All right, the wings in the verse referenced in task 3 above, we already went over this, is a special word, kanfeh, kanaf being one wing. What special garment has a kanaf? 4 of them, in fact, and what hangs on each of the 4? What happened to someone who touched the kanaf of Yeshua's garment? Do you see a garment referenced in the tasks above? So we already pointed both of those out. So where is the garment in 1 through 12, and whose is it? Other than number 3, where's the garment referenced?
Well, she said if I can only touch the hem of his garment.
Kafah.
Oh, perhaps in number 8, you are clothed with glory and majesty, who covers
There
himself
you go.
as with a garment.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Elohim is dressed in light as with a garment, right? So basically in number 3, you have the talit that has 4 kanfot on it. And we already talked about what happened to someone who touched the kanaf of Yeshua's garment. She was healed. Do you see a garment? I should probably put another referenced in the task above, and whose is it? So that's what verse 8 says. God covers himself as with light, in light as with a garment. Okay.
And Daniel, isn't there another verse that says something to the effect of, I'm going to butcher it, I know, but that I think it's either the Gentiles, how it's worded, or those who are not saved are going to cling to the hem of the garment or the tzitzit of those who are being caught up
In the last
in the
days.
last days.
Isn't it in the last days? Men will come to you and say that you know Yahweh.
Yes, but your first part of your statement was a little off, Joe. That's why I hesitated. But you're right. There is. It's in. I want to say it's in Zechariah, but it says basically that in the last days, 10 men will take hold of him who is a Yehudi, a Jew. Specifically says Jew. Will take a hold of the hem, the kanaf of him who is a Jew, and say, "We will go with you, for we know that Elohim is with you." And so I believe that is a foreshadowing of the day that we live in, when people are coming back to the Jewishness of the faith and putting on the talit and praying the prayers. And the congregation is generally, look at our congregation, we're generally 10-1 in regard to Jews versus Gentiles. And I believe that's what that is a prophecy about. I forget where that is exactly. I want to say it's in Zechariah, but I'm not. Maybe Zephaniah. I'm not 100%.
I think it's Zechariah too.
Zechariah
also.
too?
No, I mean, I think it's in Zechariah also.
I think it is, but I hesitate to say where. I want to say it's in chapter 10, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay.
So it's Elohim's garment, right?
The last part is. So the first answer is that the woman
Yeah.
with the issue of blood was healed.
Mhm.
You were right, Daniel. It was in chapter 8. It's in verse 23.
8:23, Zechariah.
Yes, Yahweh Zebaoth, in those days shall it come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all the languages of the nations, shall even take hold of the kanaf of him that is with you, saying, "We will go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you." 8:23.
That's right.
Zechariah.
All right. We only have 10 minutes left, so we're going to wrap up there. Did y'all get anything out of it? Is it helpful to
Yeah.
do these together? These?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
Okay.
good.
Very much.
I didn't want to bore y'all. It looked like we might have lost somebody, but I didn't want to bore y'all too much.
No, you never bore us, Daniel, but you did ask
No.
us to possibly come back to the imagery of the candles to explain Trinity, how
Oh, yeah.
It was
How,
something specific that you said. So help refresh my, let me do something and then I'll let you try to refresh my memory. So let me
I'm
get,
trying to refresh my own memory too. I wrote a note down, but it's kind of vague. But
well, you should have made it a more precise note.
I know, right?
You were
all
saying
we
that
need.
they used the candles to explain the Trinity in the
Right.
same way that Daniel explained it.
Yeah, I was saying that a lot
So
of times
let me
the
get back to that. Where were we? Somewhere along in here. So, yeah, it had to do with the way that the Trinity is expressed. The difference between the way the Trinity is expressed by Catholics versus Protestants who give the exact explanations that we give and yet call it Trinity. Okay? And so the point that I was going to make is the definition, the Catholic definition of Trinity is that there are three people, three persons living in the same substance. In other words, sharing the same essence, the same body, if you will. And so God is not sitting on a throne. God is in Yeshua sitting on the throne. Okay, and other people have used the egg to try to express that. Protestants use the egg to try to express it, but that's not sufficient either because Yeshua has his very own body. Okay, and the point of it all is that Yeshua is right now today a human being in a flesh and bone body. He's made up of the same thing we are, except God invigorates his body. Blood no longer does. You with me? So when a Protestant Trinitarian gives you that and you go, that's exactly what I said, then you need to explain to them, you don't believe in the Trinity, you believe what I believe, you just won't let go of that word Trinity. And here's the actual definition of Trinity. Three people stuffed into one body. That's what the Trinity is. And so the word is homostasis or something like that. You can look it up. But that's the word with which I take umbrage in the official Greek definition by the Catholic Church of Trinity, which is three different people stuffed into the same substance. In other words, when you get to heaven, you're going to see Yeshua. You're going to see Jesus, and that's it. And standing next to him is Mary. Okay? And so there's a verse in 1 Yochanan Aleph, 1 John, I believe, that says, if you do not have the Son, you do not have the Father. If you do not have the Father, you do not have the Son. And the idea of denying Yeshua in a flesh and bone body right now is the spirit of Sheker Mashiach, Mashiach HaSheker, the false Messiah. It's a perversion of who Messiah is to say that he is God and they, all three of them, share the same body. That's a schizophrenic. That's a person who is possessed. That is not what the scriptures define.
But Daniel, a lot of times, and I'm just throwing stuff out here that I've heard all my life, right? And I think now might be a time to bring it up. But they say, well, just like you are 3 in 1, you are mind, body, and spirit.
I can show you where we're about 7 different things inside this human body. The human is fearfully and wonderfully made. We're not just a body, soul, and spirit. Okay? So, and you can show them in the scriptures. You have a nefesh, you have a neshama, you have a lev, you have a sechel, you have basar, you have all of these different parts that make up a human being. So that blows that right out the window.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it.
Now do that in English, please.
You have a body, you have a soul, you have a spirit, you have a heart, you have a mind, you have an intellect, you have a will, you have emotion, you have all kinds of stuff going on inside of it.
Daniel?
Wow.
none of those things can function outside of you, though.
That's right.
So even though all of those things are there, they only can function within you, just which really puts to bed the Trinity, in my opinion.
But it puts to bed the idea of comparing a human being to God.
And Yeshua cannot function independent of God, of Elohim.
Correct.
He can certainly be outside of, he can certainly be on earth and God in heaven on his throne.
But it's all part of him, of Elohim.
He's connected to him. Yeah, he's one with Elohim. Absolutely. That's what Echad means. He is one with Elohim. And so he is an extension of his Father. Yeah. So I get what you're saying now. Yeah. But my point is that a human being is incomparable to the Almighty God. You can't do that. We're created beings. He's not created. You can't put him in a human shell and say that he's a body, soul, and a spirit, and Yeshua is the body. And that's effectively what they say. That's effectively what they're saying when they say that. Just like we're body, soul, and spirit, you got the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. That's effectively what they say.
Yeah.
You know? And so they're saying that God lives inside the body of Yeshua. That's the Trinity. That's what oneness Pentecostals say. And they're flat wrong because they are denying either the Father or the Son. You can't have one without the other. You can't call Jesus.
Well, and the fact is that,
huh?
Right. I'll say the fact is too that any self-respecting believer that would look at any pagan religion will realize that 90% or more of the pagan religions are all based on a Trinitarian doctrine, like
Trinity emerged out of the Eastern religions. That's exactly right, and that was the difference between all that. That's what Canaan. The Trinity is actually a Canaanite doctrine, and that's what God went in there to destroy. Was Canaanite doctrine. Okay, and it originated in Canaan, in the land of Israel before it became Israel. That's where the Trinity was birthed. Baal and Ishtar are the male and the female, and then I forget the name of the son, but the Egyptians had their own. I told you Constantine was from Greece, but his dad served in Egypt for the Roman Empire, and he loved Egyptian mythology, and that's where he adopted the idea of Trinity from. He was a pagan until a week before he died, and I believe he died a pagan. I think he was just getting an insurance policy when he had the guy whose name starts with an E to immerse him.
Irenaeus?
Yeah, so many other gods. Why not take one more, right?
Exactly.
Daniel, I have a question based on what you just said, because people always say that Elohim chose the Jewish people because they were not any better than anybody else, but he chose them. But Abraham was really the first who observed and worshipped the one true God, because at that time everybody was pagan. So it wasn't just random, I'm going to pick these people. There was a reason, because Abraham was righteous unto God because he believed in one true God.
Exactly. He believed in the Yahweh, he served him, he worshiped him, and he believed that he was the only God and that he was one. Absolutely. And he chose the children of Abraham not because of their merit, but because of the promise that he made to Abraham. And that promise was made to Abraham because Abraham trusted in Yah and obeyed him. And so anybody that is a son of Abraham, it doesn't matter whether they're Jewish or Gentile, they're not his son until they trust Yah and believe in him as one God and obey him. And that can only be done through Yeshua because everybody else is blind. Our Jewish people don't even admit that God has a form. They now say he's a gas, he's ethereal, you can't see him, he's unseeable, you can't say his name. They've gone off the trail. Okay? And so in order to Yeshua tried to set that right, and he managed to do it for about 500 Jewish men, who then started the faith that we now follow, and it spread across the world for about 200 and some odd years, and then a Roman emperor comes in and hijacks it and perverts it and brings in all this Canaanite stuff, You know, and that is human nature. That is our inclination, is to go that way. And so what we're fighting here, when we're fighting against this Trinity doctrine, is we're fighting the human nature to go against God. That's the spirit of Mashiach HaSheker, to deny the Father and the Son coexisting as one entity, with the human being standing outside the entity we call God, standing, you know, by his right hand. God has a right hand. I'm convinced of that.
So we keep blaming this stuff up on the Catholics and Catholicism, but that's not necessarily where the blame needs to be. It needs
That's
to go
not the
deeper.
source of it. That they propagated it and spread it into, you know, on pain of death, by the way, and that's why people won't give up that word Trinity, is because there's a spirit behind it that is, you will go to hell if you don't believe this. And that's why Protestants won't give up the word. And you've got Bible colleges named after it. You get after, you know, Trinity Bible, you know, Trinity University. You've got, and some of those are Protestant, you know. So they're scared to death to give up that word. That one word, Trinity. And it's because of a spirit of fear of being condemned to hell.
So to come against that spirit, we need to be coming not against Catholicism in general, but the spirit of fear itself, or what's the actual spirit that we need to come against to?
Mashiach HaSheker.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Daniel, I have a question. I may be digressing, but in Islam, the Arabs say that they say La ilaha illallah, and that there is no God but Allah. Essentially saying that God is one God. He's not triune. So do they believe in the same God?
No. Because they won't call him Yahweh.
Right.
And their God is manifested in that little rock in the northwest corner of the temple in Mecca.
Yes. A meteor.
Yeah, it was a piece of the moon. And is what they believe. That's why the moon is on all their flags. They are a lunar worshiping people. And
yeah, they're pagan.
Say again?
It's pagan.
Yeah, it's paganism. And so they go dance around that moon rock every year because they believe that God is in that little box in Mecca, that black box in Mecca, and they believe that piece of rock in the northwest corner of that temple is God.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
That's funny because I've been saying for years, don't put God in a box.
That's exactly what they did.
They do. They worship that rock.
Yep.
Wow. This was a good discussion tonight.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you got to the question, Joe, about the candle. Did we?
Oh yeah, we never did that. So I guess the question was like a lot of people try to say, well, see, this is like one candle, and it's like the same thing you said, Daniel. But like this is one candle, but this candle can be split up into these 3 different candles, and these candles can all go do these different things, but they come back and you join them all up to one candle. And they use that as the example. But honestly, as you bring up oh my gosh, my brain just went blank. The menorah, as you bring up the menorah, that makes more sense than even the 3 candle example that people use. But that's the discussion that we're supposed to come back to, I think, is that that's what people use to explain.
I use fire as a symbol, but that's not the end-all be-all symbol that defines God. That's just an example for us to understand how he gives us the Ruach. The connection between so the Spirit, even though we can't see it, yes, so I by myself have that light inside of me, but I also have an umbilical connection, a spiritual umbilical connection to God, and there's a reason I'm saying that. I don't know if it's proper to say, but I think it helps. Everybody knows what an umbilical cord is.
Imagery there, yes.
So
Yeah.
we have this connection to God by the Ruach HaKodesh, and maybe an umbilical is not the right word because it's not a string. It's Him. It's His presence. We tap into it here on earth when we are clean before Him, and when we are confessing Him, and when we are trusting, and when we are, we're attached to it. But we each have our own light. Okay. So the oneness is because of the Ruach HaKodesh. That's how God is everywhere. That's His omnipresence, is the Ruach HaKodesh. But it's at times centralized and in one place a million times over. Let's say there's 1 million people on earth who believe. There's 1 million candles on earth, but the Ruach is everywhere. Are you with me?
Right.
I look this way because I see your faces over here, and I'm sorry. I need to get in the habit of looking.
Okay.
Everybody get that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I think that the thing that they're trying to say, they're trying to explain Trinitarianism by using basically the same example that you just used. And all they're really doing is showing that they believe basically the same thing we believe.
They believe what we
as you
do.
said, they're not.
And you need to preface, anytime you have this conversation, you need to preface it with that. You and I say it often, you and I most likely believe the same way, but our semantics about it is different. And the one difference that we have is I will not call God a Trinity. I will not do it. It defies the Shema. I'm not going to do it. He's not a Trinity. He's not three. He's one. He manifests to us in His Son. He manifests to us in His Ruach HaKodesh, but that is Him. It's a manifestation of God. Yeshua is a perfect representation, the express image of His Father. He's not a separate person, but He's a human being. And Ruach, on the other hand, is not a person at all. And that's what I wanted to bring up. I didn't put it in this section, but Ruach is a feminine noun. And so when you're reading it in Hadavar and it mentions the Ruach, it's going to say it and not he. And the reason is because the word for it in Hebrew there is she, if we go literally with the gender. So the gender of the Ruach in the Hebrew language is she. And that's not female. That's it's just a different way. It's a feminine noun. And so if we were to translate it by English pronouns, we would be saying, but the Spirit, she will lead you and guide you into all truth. Okay? And I dangerously say that because a lot of people will take it and run with it and create a female deity. I knew God was a woman. That's not what it is. It's a quality. The Ruach is nurturing like a mother would be. Are you with me?
Like Spanish has so many words that end with a masculine or a feminine.
Every word, every noun in Hebrew in the Hebrew language is either masculine or feminine. And what I'm saying is Ruach is feminine. And so can't say. And what they did in the Greek to get around that is they neutered it. Hebrew doesn't have a neuter gender. So in Greek, they have a neuter gender, which is neither masculine nor feminine. And so pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A, I believe, or pneuma, it may be pneumos, I can't remember. It's been 20 years since I studied Greek. But the word pneuma is the word for spirit, and it's neutered. So I think that's kind of how they got around it, is they pick a neutered word, and then they could justify saying he will lead you and guide you into all truth when they translated it into English.
And that makes all the sense because America is a neutered nation in general. And now they're pushing the Trinity, and this is what we got now to deal with.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop. I can keep going.
All right.
So wisdom is also then must be a feminine noun. Right? Wisdom, Hakma, is that a feminine?
I do believe it is. I'd have to double check. I don't have it all memorized.
Okay, so that kind of helps me understand Hakma, Ruach. Those are just they have they're a feminine noun, but it's just the pronoun. It's not
it's describing Ruach. So Chokhmah would be feminine, yes.
Okay.
All right. Avinu Malkeinu, in the name of your son, Yahweh Yeshua HaMashiach, we give thanks for your word. We ask you to correct us where we err. And we worship you and give you praise for revealing yourself to us in your son, Yeshua the Messiah. We ask you to help us to clearly communicate who he is to your people and to those who are lost. And give us the opportunity and the power to do that. In his name. Amen.
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 Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you.
Shalom. Dan. Shalom. Joe. Shalom.
Shalom, Leo. I'll call you in a minute.
Okay.